Chapter 21. After the Secretary Fang received the news, his nervous heart was finally relieved. He walked towards the black car that was parked by the roadside and informed the passenger within, "Mr. Mu, everything has been arranged. Miss Gu will definitely be attending the graduation ceremony." The automatic door slowly opened, revealing a handsome and beautiful young man sitting inside. His looks were quite imposing. Even his sitting posture seemed to emanate his excellent temperament. The young man listened and casually replied, in acknowledgement, without showing emotion. Secretary Fang smiled in self-deprecation. Everyone else has been telling him not to expect too much change from the boss. If he wanted to see Mr. Mu's face show more emotion, he'll have to practice for another 100 years. The most difficult task for Secretary Fang was being mentally prepared at any given time. If the CEO was in a bad mood, the man could release an overbearing aura, even without speaking. After looking at the time, the secretary reminded him, "Sir, it's getting late. The graduation ceremony will soon begin. Should we head to the school now?" After the assistant spoke, Mr. Mu suddenly smiled. Who knows what could be running through his mind? His slender fingers fiddled with a jade bracelet in his hand as he leaned back and ordered, "Let's go." His movements caused the car to shake slightly. The secretary's heart trembled in fear when he suddenly saw his boss smile. Secretary Fang climbed onto the front seat and wiped the non-existent sweat on his forehead. Every time Mr. Mu laughed like this, it meant that someone had caught his interest. Whoever had the ability to catch this man's attention, whether it was a blessing or a curse, was definitely someone capable. The fact that Mr. Mu had him investigate a woman named Gu Jin caused Secretary Fan to feel puzzled. Mr. Mu was currently 27 years old and had inherited the Mu company 3 years ago. He never spoke of women for the past few years, and he never had a girlfriend. How could the boss suddenly be interested in such a boring, plain woman? After Mr. Mu discovered that Gu Jin was attending the Imperial College, he straightaway accepted the university's invitation to hand the awards to outstanding graduates. It was an honor to receive any kind of invitation from Imperial Normal University, which was reputed to be the best college in Z country. But wasn't Mr. Mu dismissive of the invite before? Could the boss be attracted to the good wife and mother type? Realizing that he was trying to speculate his employer's thoughts, Secretary Fan felt chills down his spine and thought to himself, "Amitabha, please save me from punishment." The truth is, only Mu Mingcheng is aware of his own thoughts. Going back to a week ago, Mu Mingcheng had just completed the acquisition of a film and television company, so he went to Yuqing Pavilion to dine with the manager who used to be in charge of that company. Who would have thought that the manager had impure intentions and wanted to climb on board the Mu's large ship? That day, the man called a few women to the room to please Mr. Mu. Although Mu Mingcheng wasn't happy with the arrangements, he was also familiar with the hidden rules in business, so he did not say anything. But he made sure not to let those women close to him. However, he never expected his host to be shameless enough to drug him. Chapter 22. That day, Mu Mingcheng was angry because some unknown woman had landed into his embrace. His defenses were lowered for a moment and he fell for a scheme. As someone who had been specially trained in the military, ordinary drugs had little effect on him. But who knows where that trashy manager received the news saying Mr. Mu's potency as a man was very low. As a result, the manager went crazy enough to purchase a whole package of highly concentrated aphrodisiac from the black market. Just when Mu Mingcheng felt his body's unusual changes, he immediately packed up the person in charge and chased him away along with the women. However, the medicine's efficacy was too strong. Even though it only touched his lips, its effects were almost immediate, rendering him unsuitable for leaving the room. He relied on his strong willpower and self-control and asked his men to send for a doctor in the meantime. In order to prevent others from seeing him make a fool of himself, Mu Mingcheng drove everyone out of the room. Everything was still under his control. While he was struggling to endure, a stranger suddenly entered the room. A woman. Years of experience in reconnaissance allowed him to accurately judge that this woman was unexpectedly alert. The moment he smelled her intoxicating fragrance, Mu Mingcheng recognized her as the woman who fell into his arms earlier that day. His heart was suddenly filled with disgust, but because of the drug's efficacy, his body felt even more tortured by discomfort. While tightly holding her waist and feeling her struggle within his arms, he reacted even more strongly. Damn it. But wasn't the worst part. When he saw her peach-like eyes widen in fright while breathing heavily, for a moment, he actually felt pity for her. In that short moment, he couldn't help but sniff her sweet fragrance and lift his hand to touch those warm, soft lips. Mu Mingcheng felt as if he was about to lose control. As a result, his first encounter to a woman's softness prompted him to touch her without restraint. But just then, the cruel woman head-butted his chin and nailed her high heels against his instep. For someone who had experienced many things in the mission field, this was the first time Mr. Mu had tasted of a woman's weapon. But this was not the most painful part. She finally kicked between his legs. Mu Mingcheng fell to the ground. He only had time to grab on to the jade bracelet on her wrist before watching her slip away. After that vicious blow, he suspected that the injured important part, which he hadn't used for the past 30 years, would never be of use again. As soon as he returned to the Mu building, the indignant Mu Mingcheng angrily ordered his men to investigate that woman. Based on the reports, she was the epitome of a virtuous lady. The thin pages were enough to describe how she lived for the past 20 years, but when Mu Mingcheng stared at the words, gentle temperament and dignified atmosphere, he felt for the first time in his life that he did not recognize these Chinese characters. Can these commendatory words describe a murderous woman? Interesting. Ever since he left his team, Mu Mingcheng rarely encountered people who made him want to explore. Gujin, I am looking forward to our next meeting. Mu Mingcheng rubbed the blood jade bracelet between his fingers as he smiled with expectation. Chapter 23. Mu Mingcheng rubbed the blood jade bracelet between his fingers as he smiled with expectation. Although he looked like a handsome and elegant man of the elite on the surface, he was clearly a demon hiding his sharp fangs underneath. At 7:30 a.m., a luxury car with a comfortable interior along with a modified normal appearance for the exterior drove into the capital's Normal University. The school staff of the Imperial University of China waited by the entrance early in the morning. Once they saw his car, they came forward to greet him. Mr. Mu, your arrival will truly help our university to flourish. Mu Mingcheng stepped off the car in a proper, neat suit and shook the speaker's hands with a gentle smile. Principal, you jest. Just being invited to attend your school's graduation ceremony is an honor for me. Another person came up to him to shake hands. Seeing that the person's temperament was different from those of the school's staff, Mu Mingcheng shook his hands and smiled back. The principal stood with a confident posture as he proudly led Mu Mingcheng towards the auditorium, his lips raised to a gloating smile. Which university, in all of Z country, had the ability to invite Mu Mingcheng? Although they did not know which unlucky dog had managed to attract this dangerous man, at any rate, in the eyes of outsiders, the school had the capability of inviting such a high-class guest. In addition, other celebrities, those who discover that Mu Mingcheng was coming to Normal University, will also appear in order to build connections with him. This year's graduation ceremony will be the grandest one held since the college's founding. The auditorium was crowded with people who were coming and going, but everything continued to flow in an orderly fashion. The air conditioning helped to cool down the heat within the large hall. Gujin stepped into the auditorium with her 10-centimeter high heels. She wore a red cheongsam with an exquisitely embroidered white crane. A group of ladies stood in an orderly row for greeting. Since ancient times, scholarly families in China had produced generations of beautiful women. This sentence was still true today. When Gujin stepped into the hall and saw the pleasing row of attractive women, her earlier dissatisfaction of being dragged into this ceremony had now dissipated. Gujin entered the hall and joined them with an uplifted mood. Soon enough, the crowd began to settle down, and people began to hurry to their seats. Suddenly, a thunderous applause broke out as the headmaster led a young man wearing glasses towards the podium. As one of the hostesses, Gujin stood at the front row of the hall and caught a glimpse of the special guest. She thought the man seemed a bit familiar. While she was observing, the principal and his guests settled down and took their seats. The man lifted his gold-rimmed glasses and swept his gaze accurately at Gujin's direction. When their eyes met, an idea flashed in Gujin's mind, and she remembered who this man was. He was that dangerous man that she bumped into at Yuqing Pavilion's entrance that day. She remembered seeing the disgust beneath his fake smile upon their first meeting. At this time, her woman's sixth sense prompted her to hastily lower her head and avert her gaze. She did not know whether it was an illusion or not, but the man's eyes seemed to dwell on her for a moment. Chapter 24. The graduation ceremony was as grand and extraordinary as everyone expected, with prominent school leaders and celebrities in attendance. Even the students who came to watch the ceremony were more attentive than in the past. No one spared a glance at their phones. Their attention was cast on the stage. More precisely, to a man sitting in the center of the platform, who appeared so dazzling that he looked as if he had walked straight out of a comic book. Numerous female students couldn't help but stare. When the ceremony began, the headmaster gave a lengthy opening speech before having the etiquette team continue with the proceedings. Gujin folded her hands in her lap and smiled politely, but in truth, she was listening closely to the other girls as they whispered excitedly about the man on stage. He is so handsome. He even wears glasses, and he has that elegant and restrained temperament of a high-class man. Do you think he has abs? Tsk, what do you think? He looks slam with clothes on, but if you take them off, I bet he is a stud. Gujin suddenly thought of the steel-hard chest that could be hidden underneath those clothes and gave an inward nod of approval. The girls, not knowing they were being overheard, took their discussion in a direction that was not polite to describe in good company. Gujin chuckled at these spring-hearted girls, then returned her focus back to the stage. Indeed, with the man's remarkable physique and confident posture that was as straight as a tree, it was no wonder he stood out amongst the crowd of beer-bellies. Needless to say, he was a fine male specimen, with an outstanding appearance and a powerful aura. However, none of this had anything to do with her. Hey, is he really that guy? While Gujin was lost in thought, somebody accidentally bumped into her arm. Ah? What? She said in confusion. The person who bumped into her was another hostess who was part of the greeting ceremony. Her eyes shone and her cheeks were flushed as she yelled excitedly. Muming Chen! Muming Chen! Gujin said. For some reason this name sounded a little familiar. It's the man sitting in the middle. The girl explained as she looked at Gujin incredulously. Even you should know of him. He is the legendary CEO of the Mew Company. The girl then gave her a once-over and eyed her suspiciously. Are you new to the etiquette team? Why haven't I seen you before? It was unusual for the etiquette team to recruit someone under 1.6 meters, but Gujin's face was 3 points prettier than their captain. Yes, Gujin replied, wanting to avoid clearing up this confusion. The girl's question added more to her is, and she did not want to waste time explaining, so she simply lied and said, I just came in a few days ago, so it's normal if you don't recognize me. However, Gujin's smile was very stiff. The girl did not think too deeply about her response. She simply patted Gujin's arm and said, Don't be nervous. Just follow me later and you'll get used to more activities in the future. Chapter 25. Gujin nodded and looked at the man on stage. Mu Mingcheng Mu Mingning. She finally remembered. Mu Mingcheng, a man who rarely appeared in the novel, was mostly someone mentioned from the heroine Chengxin's flashbacks. His role was mainly to arouse jealousy from the male lead and punishing the heroine with all kinds of humiliation. Anyone who sees his appearance might describe him as a gentleman who was bright like the clear moon and charming like the clear wind. For someone who appeared as noble and as gentle as him, hearing anyone say that Mu Mingcheng would go on to humiliate someone in that way might sound blasphemous. However, people shouldn't be judged just by their looks. When Chengxin was 16 years old, she was much more rebellious and arrogant than she was today. At that young age, she was the apple of everyone's eyes. At that time, a classmate of hers was about to celebrate his birthday, and he just happened to be her secret crush. Chengxin made an appointment along with her fellow students to attend his party at the bar that evening. However, that same day she got into a quarrel with her family, fired the driver, and went to the bar by herself. By the time she arrived, the party was already over. The bar's customers were a dangerous mix of hidden dragons and snakes. When they saw a rare beauty like her walking alone, the group of men took the initiative to come up and to talk to her. They simply started a conversation, but soon the newcomer found herself being pressured. Chengxin was an underage girl who was well protected by her family all year round. How could she cope with this sticky situation? Many questionable things happen like this in the bar, but nobody ever bothers to stop them from happening. After all, which proper girl would go out to the bar alone at night? For the first time, Chengxin knew what fear and regret meant. Her cries for help disappeared under the claws of several disgusting men. At this time of desperation, the appearance of a certain man was just like a god who had descended from the heavens. That person was Mu Mingcheng. On that same day, he was carrying out his mission to help the police guard an international criminal who had just been brought to justice, all while preventing any discord from happening at the bar. In this situation, fulfilling his duties as an officer prompted him to save the female protagonist. For him, it was merely a trivial matter, but for Chengxin, the tall and handsome man was her only strand of hope that saved her from the clutch. He is of demons. She was like a girl infatuated with her first love as she thought of him. In contrast, the birthday boy that she had a secret crush on was like a small green onion or even a weak chicken when compared to Mu Mingcheng. A hero who rescued the beauty, Mu Mingcheng became the bright moon that lighted up the female protagonist's dark world. In the original novel, the female protagonist would often mention his name to the male lead, and then the plot would move on predictably from there. Almost every time the female lead is upset, the male lead would feel pleased. But then the female lead would mention Mu Mingcheng's name, causing her partner to feel jealous. Afterwards, the two protagonists would quarrel a bit more while deepening their bonds with each other at the same time. Chapter 26. As Gujin recalled these details, she gave a meaningful glance at Mu Mingcheng. It was him. Perhaps her curious gaze was so obvious that it caused the man to inadvertently look in her direction. He adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses, and the corner of his mouth twitched upward. Gujin saw his faint smile, but did not dare act surprised. She recalled a few chapters in the novel that described Mu Mingcheng's background as a side character in the shadows. He was the king who had fought and survived in the world's most dangerous tropical forest, with hands stained in unknowable amounts of blood. This man certainly was one of the deepest hidden cards in the country's hand. Few people knew of his true identity, though now he was discharged from his military service and had returned home. With his family's backing from his mother's side, coupled with his tough and cruel means of doing business, Mu Mingcheng was able to successfully grow his business through rain and storm. Walk quickly. Gujin felt her arm being pulled along as the etiquette hostess reminded her. We should be presenting the award. She shook herself from her thoughts and strode up to the podium where the honorees were seated. Coincidentally, she ended up being paired with Mu Mingcheng. As she approached him, Gujin's legs and stomach threatened to tremble rebelliously, but she walked gracefully to hand the certificate to him. Standing in the center of the platform, Wu Mingcheng softly gave a few words to the school leaders next to him, causing them to admire him. He did not actually care for them. Instead, his gaze was focused on the approaching woman's swaying figure. The gorgeous red cheongsam skimmed her perfect waistline. As she walked, her slender white legs were revealed from the slits of the dress on either side. Wu Mingcheng had to admit that this was a very beautiful woman, and when he looked down, he saw her white, delicate feet. He recalled those hateful high heels that nailed on his instep. Painful memories welled up inside him, and Wu Mingcheng's face turned blue. Whether it was a second or a century, Gujin never felt that time was so difficult as the man slowly accepted the certificate. Ah, Gujin whispered. The sudden ticklish sensation on her palm made her jerk back her hand quickly, almost drawing attention from the others. He was teasing her. Anger rose from her heart, and she looked up and glared at the tall figure. Her nervousness suddenly disappeared, and her legs no longer trembled from anxiety. She was ready to make a move with her high heels. If they were not at an award ceremony on stage in front of everyone, she would have made sure that this person couldn't continue living as a man. So what if he is a president of a company? And what if he is dangerous? This kind of scum that takes advantage of women should be reprimanded. Gu Jin was about to I am for him with her high heels, but she soon stopped herself midair and retracted her feet. Upon seeing this, Wu Mingcheng snorted and silently rubbed his fingertips. Although she stopped herself in time, he had seen her subtle movements clearly. Sure enough, people don't change easily. Chapter 27. Gu Jin had never tried on 10-centimeter tall heels in her previous life, but now she had to wear them to fit in with the group of 170 etiquette hostesses. What was it like to wear them? Of course, one would feel more confident and imposing with heels. But after having them on for so long, her ankles eventually began to ache. Sure enough, one must pay the price to be beautiful. When all the awards were given, the ceremony was soon wrapped up. The leading colonel gave the concluding remarks, so the etiquette ladies did not have any more duties to fulfill. After conversing with others, Gu Jin decided to head back to the dressing room so she could change her outfit. Gu Jin. Just when she had walked out of the crowd, she heard someone call to her. When she looked behind, it turned out to be Tong Lin. Tong was holding a few sheets of paper, which appeared to be a manuscript. The young man wore a casual white shirt, black pants, and had an overall neat appearance. He was tall and slender, just like a handsome school prince that walked straight out of a romance novel. Because Tong Lin was serious in his speech and mannerisms, people would often feel a sense of distance and coldness from him. In most female students' minds, he was indeed an unreachable male god. Gu Jin did not expect to see him here, but then again, she somehow became an etiquette lady for a day. She smiled as she asked him, "Oh, it's President Lin. What's the matter?" Due to her discomfort with wearing high heels, Gu Jin's face was slightly pale, and her effort to smile inexplicably seemed to evoke compassion from her onlookers. "I came to give something to my friend," he said. Tong Lin was surprised to see how pale her face was, and he said with a frown, "Why are you here?" Gu Jin did not miss the hint of concern that flashed deep within Tong Lin's eyes. A warm feeling arose in her heart, and she explained to him her reason for being there. In the novel's main plot, this person had never made an appearance. According to the former Gu Jin's memory, she did have a good impression of this man. Moreover, Tong Lin's handsome features was in line with the present Gu Jin's taste in men. If she wasn't experiencing her difficulties right now, she would have been eager to converse with him. Unfortunately, the pain on her ankles reminded her that she needed to change her shoes right away. After saying goodbye, she went straight to the dressing room. Tong Lin's eyes followed her figure as she disappeared into the distance. He bit his lip when he realized that he had forgotten to ask her what she thought about the magazine he was starting. When the president's burning gaze was out of sight, Gu Jin slowed down her pace. She sighed. What a pity. The dressing room was located outside the campus activity center. Everyone else was inside the activity center's auditorium to help out with the graduation ceremony and its guests. When Gu Jin arrived, there was complete silence all around without a hint of a person's shadow. She walked into the dressing room and took out a small backpack before heading to the restroom to wash the makeup off her face. The water continued to flow from the faucet, and the restroom light shone brightly. Gu Jin pulled a paper towel to dab her face before looking up at her reflection in the mirror. Suddenly, she was stunned. The mirror reflected another figure. He had an attractive and gentle face, with a jade-like elegance that could only be found in a rich young master. The stranger leaned against the bathroom wall with his arms folded across his chest. His dark green necktie was loosely tied around his neck, revealing a hint of his clavicle and giving him a seductive and sexy appearance. His dark suit jacket was slung over his arm, and the sleeves of his white-collared shirt was folded up 3 points to reveal his smooth, flowing muscles underneath. Underneath his gold-rimmed glasses were his dark-colored pupils that were as deep as an abyss. Those pair of eyes continued to gaze at Gu Jin's reflection quietly. The words charming and romantic could thoroughly describe this man's looks. Sure enough, appearances can be deceiving. Mr. Mu? Gujin suddenly turned around as she called out his name doubtfully. If one were to listen carefully, they would notice that the man gritted his teeth in annoyance, but in an almost undetectable manner. Just who was Mu Mingcheng? When it came to disguise, his qualifications based on his previous profession would have placed him as a master of camouflage among his peers. Mu Mingcheng lowered his eyes and remained silent as he carelessly played with an item in his palm. Gujin's expression suddenly changed. The precious jade bracelet she had lost was in his hands. Chapter 28. When she returned home to her family that night, Gujin confessed to her mother, Li Mingsha, about the loss of her jade bracelet. Li Mingsha understood the situation and did not blame her. Instead, she chastised Gujin for not telling the family immediately after it happened. Although the heirloom left by her mother was lost, her daughter's safety was more important. Ensuring her child's well-being was what gave this mother peace of mind. However, for the current Gujin, Li Mingsha's comforting words made her feel even more guilty. Knowing that she had taken over the true daughter's body while also losing the Gu family's heirloom gave her a heavy conscience. Despite carrying these sins, the present Gujin returned to this home. Before she could even repay the former host for receiving this physical body, she had lost the heirloom and had become a greater sinner. Gujin was angry with herself, but she did not lose her mind. Gujin said with a false smile, "Mr. Mu's bracelet looks familiar. Where did it come from?" Mu Mingcheng glanced at her, his whole body conveying a sense of solitude. He did not answer Gujin's question and lazily called, "Miss Gujin?" He investigated her. But with his wealth, it wasn't impossible for him to find out her name. Gujin's eyes flashed slyly as she said with a smile, "Mr. Mu, who would have thought a day would come where you would remember the name of a mere etiquette lady?" She played with her ID card that hung on her neck. Mu Mingcheng's eyes glinted dangerously and his lips raised to a smile. He said meaningfully, "Miss Gu is quite agile. How could I easily forget you?" "This scum!" Gujin mentally spat at him, but did not let it show on the surface. She said politely, "Mr. Mu, it doesn't matter. I have a jade bracelet that looks just like yours. I wonder if I can borrow it?" Of course, knowing his true nature, Gujin did not expect him to agree, and they both knew it. "You can." Unexpectedly, Mu Mingcheng readily agreed. He straightened up and held out his palm to reveal the bracelet. Gujin hesitated for a moment as she waited for him to hand it to her. However, unable to bear the psychological pressure any longer, she preferred offending this pervert by snatching the jewelry out of his hands. Gujin quickly reached for the bracelet. But the moment she touched the jewelry, Mu Mingcheng pulled his hand away and swiftly brought it to Gujin's waist. He clamped her arm in his other hand, buried his head by her neck, and whispered with a low voice, "Has Miss Gu forgotten what she has done?" His voice became softer, as if he was speaking to a lover. Mu Mingcheng whispered in her ear, "I am a vengeful man. The mark left by Miss Gu's high heels on that day was not light. Don't forget, Mr. Mu, you attacked me first," Gujin said coldly. She could feel his body heat through his thin shirt. Gujin struggled within his embrace. After she had removed her makeup, her face appeared more fair and tender. The blush on her cheeks was more apparent, and her eyes were slightly teary. "This is crazy." Gujin lifted her foot, then stamped down quickly. This time she did not succeed. "Do you think I'd fall for the same trick twice?" Mu Mingcheng expected her retaliation and quickly evaded the attack. He pinned Gujin to the wall and clamped her legs with his knees so she couldn't move. Unlike Gujin's outrage, Mu Mingcheng inhaled the sweet scent of this long-lost girl. He was excited to see a cat with its claws out. Gujin turned her head in disgust and looked away. All of a sudden, a wave of pain overcame her lower abdomen and her legs trembled with weakness. This sharp pain hit Gujin like thunder, causing her strength to ebb away. Shit! Her relatives came to visit. Chapter 29. In her previous life, Gujin often heard her female friends complain of severely painful menstrual cramps. "It hurts so much, it's unbearable. It feels like a strong man punches your abdomen with a heavy fist. The pain is so sharp, just like a dull knife piercing through your flesh." Whenever she heard them complain, Gujin thought they were exaggerating. In her personal experience, she would often feel a slight ache during the first 2 days of her menstruation, then afterwards there was no longer any pain. In the end, Gujin couldn't relate to any of her friends' stories. But now, she had the chance to personally experience it herself. Gujin knitted her brows and gritted her teeth as she bore the pain. Her face quickly turned pale and a thin layer of sweat precipitated at the tip of her small, exquisite nose. Her blue veins began to swell visibly underneath her pale skin, and her knees shivered weakly against the man's thighs. Waves of pain pounded upon Gujin's sensitive nerves like a tidal wave, causing her to almost faint from dizziness. This was her mistake. The original host was a quiet girl who did not enjoy playing sports. Her physical fitness was in worse shape than what the current Gujin was used to. Even this current body's rhythm in having a menstrual cycle has always been erratic, so one could never predict when it would arrive. That was why the former host always prepared a hot pack and a bottle of warm water, just in case her period comes unexpectedly. At times, the pain was so serious that she had to resort to taking a few painkillers. However, the current Gujin who crossed over to this world is now going through this agony for the first time. Such torture seemed to suck half the life out of her. If possible, she wished she could hug her former friends in that past life and apologize to them for not understanding. Mu Mingcheng reached out to brush a stray strand of Gujin's hair behind her ear. The corner of his lips lifted to a content smile as he savored the soft fragrance and warmth of the woman within his arms. Since the first time he laid eyes on her, Mu Mingcheng knew that she had an attractive face and an alluring figure. Her temperament was also not as boring as the bookish woman described in her investigation report. After all, anyone who was able to sense his dangerous nature at first glance was no ordinary person. Since she was still wearing her traditional Chinese cheongsam, and he couldn't look away from her well-endowed, tall peaks, the woman's tiny waist struggled against his grasp, and her slender thighs were slightly exposed through her dress slits. The contrast between hard and soft seemed to put Mu Mingcheng in a daze. The depths of his eyes darkened, and his breath became hot. It seemed that this situation was going a little beyond his self-control. Mu Mingcheng was the type of person who never liked to inconvenience himself. Due to psychological reasons, he chose to join the army while avoiding relationships with any women. This time, he actually managed to meet a rare woman who could catch his interest. So why not give it a try? Feeling as if his heartstrings were being tugged, Mu Mingcheng reached out for Gujin's white earlobe and pinched it. Under the dim light, the woman's small earlobe seemed to reflect the light afterglow of the setting sun, making her appear delicate and tender. Seeing such a tempting sight, his Adam's apple moved and his mouth felt dry. He really wanted to taste this delicacy, but he was destined to be disappointed. When Mu Mingcheng felt the woman's resistance diminish within his arms, he secretly praised Gujin for doing exactly that, which would make him regain his senses. It seemed that her condition wasn't as good as she first appeared. As he leaned over, the woman shivered more intensely, and her temperature was unusually cold. Her originally ruddy lip had turned pale, making her look more pitiful. Chapter 30. Suddenly, Mu Mingcheng's mood dropped below freezing point. Was he that difficult to accept? He reluctantly retreated a little, and no longer pinned her down with his weight. The man asked with a frown, "What happened to you? How did this woman's physical condition suddenly become so poor when he had yet to exact his revenge? Just a few days ago within that dim room, the girl's strike against him was swift and skillful, without a trace of weakness. Before Gujin could slip in unconsciousness, the sound of a man's voice gradually pulled her back to her senses. She woke up to a sharp aching pain in her lower abdomen. Gujin resisted the urge to groan in pain, then faintly stared at the firm arms that held her steady, before shifting her gaze to the handsome man. Such a face was truly alluring, but a beautiful appearance could not arouse her interest if whoever owned it was a devil. Maybe she is in pain, Mu Mingcheng thought. Meanwhile, when Guji heard his earlier question, she knew that he was confused with her situation. Even in her original world, most men were not good at surmising the difficulties of women. She sneered and reprimanded him sharply. "My relatives are here. Would you mind letting go of me first?" "Your relatives?" Mu Mingcheng did not bother to budge, and instead his meaningful smile deepened. "Is Miss Gu treating me as a fool?" "Oh." Gujin rolled her eyes at him when suddenly she felt pressure in her lower abdomen. Gujin froze. This familiar sensation lent too. The situation did not allow her any time to throw a tantrum. Instead, she could only close her eyes, swallow her embarrassment, and say through gritted teeth, "Believe it or not, I am on my holiday." Mu Mingcheng wasn't familiar with the phrase relatives came to visit, but when it comes to a girl's holiday, any normal man would know what it means. Mu Mingcheng did not expect the word relative to refer to this. His body turned stiff and his face darkened. "Why did not you say so earlier?" Although he used a scolding tone, there was a tinge of warmth beneath his words, and his mood had improved. Gujin looked up at him as if he had lost his mind. Did he not understand me and actually believe that her menstruation equals to an actual legal holiday? Mu Mingcheng avoided her disbelieving eyes as he loosened his embrace and rubbed his nose. Gujin struggled walking with her high heels, but she could only endure her pain as she supported herself on her way to the dressing room. She vowed to never again wear any heels higher than 6 centimeters in her life. The small backpack she left in the locker room carried a spare feminine pad that she habitually carried with her just in case. After tidying up her clothes and calming down her sour mood, Gujin finally walked out of the dressing room. Sure enough, Mu Mingcheng still hadn't left the place. Just when she had stepped out of the building, the man turned around and their eyes met. The atmosphere felt embarrassing for a moment. "Mr. Mu, let's be frank." Gujin slung her backpack on her shoulder and suddenly looked up at him with a smile. Her pale face was as attractive as a fresh spring blossom, as she continued on to say, "A man as outstanding as Mr. Mu must have met countless wealthy people along with many kinds of riches. I am afraid that my cheap jade bracelet isn't worthy of your eyes." Mu Mingcheng was surprised once again at how calmly she composed herself, but this only provoked his interest even further. A smart woman could trigger a stronger sense of conquest for a man. His eyes flashed underneath his golden spectacles as he waited to see what else she had to say.